The eviction notice landed beside the mashed potatoes. Not metaphorically. My father slid a cream-colored envelope across my own Thanksgiving table right between the gravy boat and my grandmother's porcelain dish. He sat back folding his hands like he had just said grace. 7 days, my mother said. Colleen needs this house now. I didn't scream. I didn't beg. I looked at the 3 people I had called family. And I said, I understand. That was my first move. Before we continue, please subscribe to the channel and let us know in the comments where you are listening from. My name is Lyra. 30 years old. Medical coordinator. My life is measured in vitals and crisis management. 5 years ago, my grandfather Edward came home from the hospital with a terminal diagnosis and a family that immediately began calculating what he was worth dead. So I moved in. I ran a private hospice inside this Asheville villa while Serafina hosted grief retreats in Sedona and Colleen burned through 3 failed startups. I managed Edward's medications. His oxygen. His dignity. The 3 a.m. alarms. Nights on a wooden chair to make sure his breathing stayed even. Serafina would pass me in the hallway in her silk robe. You're just a glorified nurse, Lyra, she would say. Don't get too comfortable. This house belongs to the family legacy. Not a servant. She was right about one thing. This house did belong to family. She just had the wrong family member in mind. When Edward died, he left this house to me. Not to Serafina. Not to Colleen. To me. The glorified nurse. The servant. The one who had actually been there. They contested the will. Hired lawyers. Filed motions. Called me manipulative. That was 18 months ago. They lost. So they moved in anyway. They lost a legal battle for my house and simply walked through the front door and started redecorating. I let them. I had my reasons. Serafina's 60th birthday gala was 3 weeks after the eviction notice. She had invited every power player in Asheville to what she called her home. She found me near the catering table. And this is Lyra, she told her guests, her voice a practiced trill of condescension. She is the living help who stood by my father until the end. Such a dedicated girl. We are so glad she could stay on to assist with the transition. The guests gave me those tight, pitying smiles you give a stray dog. I took a sip of water. I looked past all of them. And I thought about the thick folder sitting in my lawyer's office. 48 hours. That was all I needed to be ready. I need to tell you something about my job. I am trained to see a collapse before it happens. That skill kept me alive in this family. I didn't stay here out of weakness. I stayed because I understood something they never did. Grandfather's mind was the most valuable thing in this house. Not the furniture. Not the land. His mind. His clarity. His signature. While they were spending his money, I was sitting with his attorney. We didn't just write a will. We built a fortress. A living trust no lawyer in North Carolina could crack. But I needed more than a will. I needed evidence. So I installed a nanny cam inside the smoke detector above Edward's bed. To monitor his breathing. That was partially true. The other reason was Colleen. He would walk into that room when he thought I wasn't watching. Stand over Edward's bed. Talk about the house like my grandfather was already gone. Once she is out, we flip this to developers by Christmas, he told Serafina in October. She's just a nurse. She doesn't belong in a house this expensive. I had that recording saved in 4 locations before he finished his sentence. Here is what they didn't know. Since the house was legally mine, every utility account was in my name. Water. The electrical grid powering this entire estate. I had scheduled the service termination 48 hours before the gala. Not a fuse. Not a tripped breaker. A clean disconnection. Effective at 9:47 p.m. I had also visited the bank that morning. A notarized affidavit of forgery on the desk of the branch manager. A man who had played chess with my grandfather every Thursday for 30 years. The paper trail of how Serafina had faked my signature to take out a home equity line against my house. $180,000. The fraud department didn't need a week. They needed an hour. Inside the gala, Colleen raised a glass of scotch stolen from Edward's collection. To a new heir, he shouted. To a home that finally belongs to a winner. The chandeliers didn't flicker. They just died. Every light in the villa went black and a collective gasp moved through the room like a wave. Serafina's voice cut through the darkness. Lyra. Fix this immediately. I didn't move. I had pre-synced a speaker hidden in the foyer to one specific audio file. Not music. A recording. Colleen's voice filled the dark ballroom. Once she is out, we flip this to developers by Christmas. She's just a nurse. She doesn't belong in a house this expensive. The room went tomb quiet. I could hear Serafina's sharp, ragged breath. Then the front doors opened. Flashlights cut through the darkness. A woman stepped in holding a badge. IRS Criminal Investigation. We have a warrant for these premises. Serafina screamed. This is a private family matter. It stopped being private, the agent replied, when you submitted forged documents to a federally insured bank. Serafina was led outside by federal agents. Her elite guests scrambled for the exit, covering their faces. Every relationship she had maintained for 30 years. Gone in 4 minutes. Colleen bolted. I knew where he was going. He had believed the family legend that Edward had hidden pre-war antiques in the stone cellar. I followed. We found him in the humid darkness, swinging a mallet against the ancient wall. Sobbing. Desperate. A section gave way, revealing a velvet-lined alcove. Colleen pulled out 3 silver platters and a wooden chest. He laughed. High and broken. I win, Lyra. I have the legacy. I watched him turn over the first platter. They are replicas, Colleen, I said. He froze. His eyes found the stamp. Made in Taiwan. The chest held only a note in Edward's handwriting. A receipt confirming the donation of the real collection to a historical foundation. In my name. Colleen dropped the mallet. It hit the stone floor with a sound like his entire future collapsing. You finally got exactly what you earned. I walked out of that cellar without looking back. My grandfather's signet ring in my pocket. The lights were out behind me. For the first time in 5 years, I was not the one tasked with turning them back on. Serafina received 3 years for grand theft. Colleen 18 months for fraud. The house was returned to the Living Trust within 90 days. A month later, a letter arrived from Serafina. Smuggled through a former cellmate. I could see her handwriting through the envelope. I didn't open it. I walked to the kitchen island. The same surface where that eviction notice had sat beside the mashed potatoes. I fed the letter into the shredder. For seconds. Then she was gone. Indifference is a more powerful shield than hate. Next month, I begin converting the West Wing into a respite center for caregivers. My grandfather didn't just leave me a house. He left me a purpose. They broke my heart thinking it would break me. They forgot the people who hold you together aren't always the ones who share your blood. Sometimes they are the ones who show up at 3 a.m. I was never the servant in this house. I was always the owner.